There is a ring on my desk, and it is far too big for any girl's finger. It is a boy's class ring, heavy and gold, and around the band someone has wound yarn, round and round, until the yarn makes a soft ball the size of a ping-pong ball. I am not going to explain it yet. It stays right here on the desk, and we come back to it near the end. Come in. Sit here by the lamp, the letters are out. I am Clara, and this is Clara's Forgotten Romance, where the codes of American courtship get explained rather than mocked. Tonight, going steady as it was actually done in the 1950s in 20 customs counted down to 1. Boys' customs, girls' customs, and the ones a couple kept together. 3 to wait for. Number 2 is that ring. Number 7 is the custom that a good many parents, a magazine, and the Catholic Church all lined up against in the same decade. And number 1 is a single number from the census that explains what all of this was for. My sources tonight are the guidance films, the magazines, and the historians, above all Beth Bailey's book on American courtship. I report what they say. I do not advise. Number 20. A boy asked early. The rule, as the historians record it, was that a date for Friday was asked for by Wednesday, at the latest. A girl asked on Friday afternoon for Friday night could say no with a clear conscience, because it suggested she had been an afterthought. So the week had a shape. The asking happened midweek, the answer came quickly, and the weekend was settled before Thursday supper. Number 19. The door. When a boy came to pick a girl up, he rang the bell, came inside, met her father, shook his hand, and got through what one account calls an awkward little interview, at the end of which he was told what time she was due home. Girls were expected to introduce a date to their parents before leaving. The boy was expected to ask directly what time they wanted her back and to wear a watch so he could manage it. Notice where the responsibility sat. The curfew was hers, but getting her home on time was his, and missing it could cost him the second date. A boy who brought a girl home late had embarrassed her, and he had failed a test her father set at the door. Some of this was protective, and some of it was controlling, and I will not pretend it was all one or the other. It was the way the house kept its hand on the evening. Think about what that doorstep did. It put a face to the boy. It put a time on the evening. And it put the father, not the girl, in the position of setting terms, which saved her from having to set them herself, and also took the choice out of her hands. The same custom protected and constrained in one motion. I keep coming back to that tonight because almost every rule on this list does it, and it is the honest way to remember them. Number 18. The boy paid. Paying stood for the role of provider, and a boy who let his date pay was looked down on. One recorded word for such a young man was a grafter, but here is the part that gets left out. Some dating guides of the period said that splitting the bill, Dutch treat, was perfectly acceptable if both had agreed to it beforehand. So the rule was debated even inside the advice books. It was strong, and it was not universal. Number 17. At a restaurant, the boy ordered for both. She told him what she wanted, and he said it to the waiter. It is recorded as a standard courtesy of the period, and I think it reads strangely now. It was meant as attentiveness. It also meant her voice went through his on the way to the kitchen. Both things are true, and I will keep saying both things are true tonight, because they usually were. Number 16. The classroom film. In 1949, Coronet Instructional Films released Dating Do's and Don'ts, directed by Gilbert Altschul with help from Reuben Hill, a professor of family life at the University of North Carolina, and narrated by Ken Nordine. Its teenage hero is called Woody, and the film walks him through the rules. Be natural on the telephone. Flowers are not required for a first date. Be on time, and a girl who is not ready on time is not worth dating. The film goes on. Dating is for weekends only, and Woody must be home at a reasonable hour. At the end of the evening, he is not to kiss the girl goodnight, and not to simply drop her at the door either. He is to say a friendly goodbye, and promise to call again next week. Choose a date for her personality, not just her looks. Be direct when you ask. A whole code, in 10 minutes of black and white, shown to a gymnasium full of 14-year-olds. Number 15. The girls' version came 2 years earlier. Are You Popular? From 1947, 10 minutes, directed by Ted Peshak. It sets Carolyn, who is careful of her appearance, polite, and considerate about how dates are arranged, against Ginny, who dates many boys and is, the film says, unpopular with both sexes as a result. It covers telephone manners and date manners for girls and boys alike, and the power of parents over the whole business. Both sexes were being filmed into their roles. Look at what Ginny is punished for in that film. She dates many boys. A generation earlier, that was exactly how a girl proved she was popular, and you will hear the study that shows it when we reach number 7. By 1947, the classroom film had turned it into a fault. The ground had shifted under the teenagers' feet within a single decade, and the adults who made the films were teaching a code they themselves had not grown up with. Number 14. The corsage. For a dance, a boy brought flowers for his date's wrist or shoulder, and the historians list it as a fixed custom of the 50s. She, in turn, often gave him a boutonniere. I will not tell you what a corsage cost in 1955 because I could not find a price I trust, and I would rather say so than invent one. What I can tell you is that the box on the doorstep was how a whole street knew it was prom night. Number 13. The dance card. A little printed booklet, its cover matching the theme of the dance, with a line for each dance and the name of the boy who had claimed it. They stayed in fashion through the 50s until dances loosened up in the 60s, and they left us pencils me in, my dance card is full, and save the last dance for me. Cutting in, the tap on another boy's shoulder, was mostly kept for one long song meant for it. More a handoff than an interruption. The last line on the card mattered most. The boy who had the last dance walked the girl out, and if she was going steady, that line was already written before the band played a note. So the dance card was a small public ledger of who belonged to whom for an evening, and the steady couples card was the one with no surprises on it. That is what going steady did to a dance. It took the suspense out, and a great many people liked it that way. Number 12. The drive-in. By 1958, there were almost 5,000 drive-in theaters in the country, and teenagers took over rows of them for the privacy, which earned the back rows a nickname I will leave to your imagination. The arrangement was understood by everyone: families in front, dating couples in the middle, and the most private business confined to the back. Nobody posted a sign. Nobody needed to. Number 11. What it cost. The average movie ticket in 1955 was 58 cents. One account of a frugal teenage boy's budget puts dating at about $7 a month, covering basketball games, sodas, and the occasional drive-in, with a school dance adding a tuxedo rental, a corsage, and gifts on top. Do you remember what a date cost when you were young, or what spending limit your family thought was reasonable? I would love to hear those numbers in the comments. $7 was real money to a boy with a paper route, which is part of why the asking was done so carefully. We are at the middle, and this is where I stop and ask. Tell me in the comments what the token was in your town: a ring, a jacket, a bracelet, and what you or your mother called going steady. I read everyone, and the words change from county to county in ways no history book records. Number 10. The telephone. A steady couple had almost no privacy on it because most households had one shared family telephone in the hall or the kitchen, not a private line in a bedroom. So a call from a steady was a performance given in front of whoever was passing. Short, careful, half in code, which is why so much of going steady happened in writing, in notes passed in school, and letters kept in a drawer, like these. Number 9. What the magazines told girls. 17, in 1950, put it plainly. When a fellow takes a girl out, the better she looks, the more he will enjoy himself, and if his date draws admiring glances, a guy feels flattered in the bargain. By 1957, the magazines were teaching a strategy. It called Chase Him Until He Catches You. Smile, compliment him by name, and have a friend invite him over on a pretext, a club meeting, a hot dog roast, rather than approach him directly. I read that to you as documentation, not advice, and I want to be plain about it. A girl was told that her job was to be looked at and to engineer being noticed without ever seeming to. That was the code. It was not kind, and a great many intelligent girls followed it anyway. because it was the water they swam in. Some of the customs on this list were lovely. This one was the decade talking, and I will not dress it up. Number 8. Going steady itself as a custom, and how common it was. One 1950s study found that 3/4 of girls and more than half of boys in the 11th and 12th grades had gone steady, many for a year or longer. By 1959, the Ladies' Home Journal could run an article under the title, "If you don't go steady, you're different." It had stopped being a choice. It had become the thing you did, or explained. Read that magazine title again. If you don't go steady, you're different. That is not an invitation, it is a warning. By the end of the 50s, a girl without a steady, or a boy without one, was the exception who had to explain herself in the school corridor. Which is a strange thing to happen to a custom that the adults, as you are about to hear, were trying to stop. The teenagers won. They usually do. But they won by building a rule at least as strict as the one they replaced. Number 7, the one I asked you to wait for. The backlash. The advice columnist Dorothy Dix wrote that going steady had all of the worst features of marriage and none of its advantages. Catholic leaders called it a proximate occasion of sin, and some parochial schools banned it outright. In 1957, Time magazine reported that teenagers were choosing to go steady rather than play the field, and that this worried parents and moral leaders. Going steady, not dating around, was the edgy thing. To see why, you have to look back a generation. In 1937, the sociologist Willard Waller described what he called the rating and dating complex at Penn State, where competitive dating of many partners was the norm, and dating widely was the mark of popularity. The 50s turned that upside down. Pairing off young and staying paired was the new thing, and to the adults who had come up under the old system, it looked like children playing at marriage. Which, in a sense, it was, and in a sense, it was not playing at all. Wait for number 1. Number 6. The advice books. Pat Boone's Twixt 12 and 20, published in 1958, was a national bestseller for teenagers and took on dating, going steady, friendships, parents, money, and faith, with the royalties going to Christian education. Amy Vanderbilt's Complete Book of Etiquette, from 1952, covered teenagers and college students alongside everything else. And a pediatrician named Frank Howard Richardson wrote For Girls Only, which, with McCall's in 1958, told girls to show interest in a boy's hobbies. I should say that I could confirm those books, their dates and their subjects, but I could not read their inside pages this week, so I will not put words in Pat Boone's mouth or Amy Vanderbilt's. What matters is the shelf. By the late 50s, there were best-selling books, magazine columns, and classroom films, all telling the same teenagers how to conduct the same romance. Going steady was not a private matter. It was a national curriculum. Number 5. The ID Bracelet. A boy's identification bracelet, his name engraved on a metal plate, given to a girl and worn on her wrist as a public sign that the two of them were going steady. Sometimes she had her own name, or a few words, engraved on the other side. It was one of the 3 standard tokens, with the ring and the jacket. You could read a girl's status across a classroom by what was on her wrist. Put the 3 tokens together, and you have the whole grammar. The ring said it most formally, and it was the hardest to wear. The jacket said it most loudly, and anyone across a football field could read it. The bracelet said it most quietly, on a wrist, with a name. A girl might have all 3 over a year, and a town could read which stage she was at. None of it was written down anywhere. Everyone could read it anyway. Number 4. The letter jacket on her shoulders. A boy lent his letterman jacket, or sweater, to his girlfriend to wear, and it was the most visible token of all, because it was his size on her frame. The letterman sweater goes back to Harvard baseball in 1865. By the 50s and 60s, the picture of a quarterback draping his jacket over his girlfriend's shoulders was fixed in the national memory, and it has never really left. Number 3. Getting pinned, the college version. A fraternity man gave his fraternity pin to a girl, and the campus understood it as a step past going steady, what people called engaged to be engaged, though in the early 50s it was not always taken as a firm promise. Some men, the accounts say, pinned more than one girl over their college years. So the pin meant something serious, and exactly how serious depended on the man, which is a sentence that could describe a good deal of this decade. And when it ended, the general accounts describe a going steady breakup as a kind of small divorce. The ring going back, the jacket returned, the bracelet handed over in a school corridor. I should tell you plainly that I could not tie that to a named historian or a dated column this week, only to the way people remember it. So take it as memory rather than record. But it follows from everything else. If the tokens announced the relationship, their return had to announce its end. And in public, the same way. I will say this once and then leave it alone. Folks ask where these customs are written down, and there is a small book linked below with many of them set out plainly. It is there if you want it, and I will not bring it up again. Now, number 2, and it is time to pick up that ring. Number 2, the class ring wrapped in angora. A steady boyfriend's class ring was far too big for a girl's finger, so she wound the band in layers of angora or mohair yarn until it fit, and then fluffed the yarn with a toothbrush into a soft ball as big as a ping-pong ball around the setting. A woman who was 7 or 8 in the late 50s remembers the girls carrying a folding toothbrush to keep refluffing it through the day. Some wore it on a chain instead. There was no fixed finger. It varied by town and by girl. It looks absurd, and it was not. The ring was the token, and the yarn was the labor of keeping it. A girl spent real time, every day, on a ball of fuzz, and the fuzz said, "I am taken and I am tending it." It was still being done in the 70s, which tells you how deep the custom ran. Of all the tokens, it is the one that was made rather than given. That is why it is number 2, and why it is not number 1. Number 1. The number from the census. In 1950, the median age at first marriage in this country was 23 for men and 20 for women. In 1956, it reached the lowest point in the entire record back to 1890. 22.5 for men, 20.1 for women. The youngest that Americans have ever married, before or since. That is what going steady was for. It was not playing at marriage. It was the road to it. And the road was short. The historian whose work sits under most of tonight is Beth Bailey, and the title of her book says in 6 words what the 50s did. From front porch to back seat. Courtship moved out of the family parlor, where the girl's mother could hear it, and into the car and the drive-in, where nobody could. The curfew, the door interview, the tokens, the classroom films, all of them were the adult's way of reaching into the back seat. Some of that reach was love, some was control. The teenagers felt both, and the ring that came next. In 1947, a copywriter named Frances Gerety at the NWA agency working for De Beers wrote the line, "A diamond is forever," to reverse a post-war slump. Before that campaign, most American engagement rings had no diamond at all. Within a generation, the diamond was the default. One correction, because it is repeated everywhere. The 2 months salary rule was not a 1950s custom. De Beers invented it in the 1980s. Nobody's father said it in 1956. 2 last pieces of the road. The hope chest, a cedar chest, a girl filled with linens and household things toward marriage, was a common coming of age right up to about the 50s, and in some families close to a requirement. And the custom of asking the father's permission before proposing, older than the century, was the expected step before a formal engagement. I could not pin that second one to a dated 50s source, so take it as the general custom it was, not a rule I can quote. So which was it, lovely or controlling? Both, and I have tried to say which was which as we went. The yarn on the ring, the jacket on her shoulders, the friendly goodbye on the porch, those were tender, and people remember them tenderly. The magazine telling a girl her job was to be looked at, the father's clock at the door, those were the decade holding the reins. A good history keeps both in the frame. So does a good memory. So here is one thing to do this week, and it costs nothing. Ask the oldest couple you know how they met, what the token was, and what time she had to be home. Ask them separately if you can. You will get 2 stories, and both will be true. Then write it down, for you, not for me. Those stories are leaving faster than any of the rings. And do tell me in the comments, the way I asked earlier, what the token was in your town, what you or your mother called going steady, and what time the door had to be closed behind you. I read everyone, and on this channel the comments are a better record than the magazines ever were. The letters go back in the desk drawer, tied the way they came, and they will be here next time because there are a great many of them. Come in again and sit by the lamp. There is always another code that somebody forgot, waiting to be explained kindly. I will see you here.